Very good afternoon to all the panelists and the attendees. This is Meher Suri, moderator for today's session. I welcome you all to this session on Broadening Horizons with New Medical Device Policy 2023, which is being organized by India Business and Trade, the thought leadership platform set up by the Trade Promotion Council of India. In this webinar, I take immense pleasure in introducing our esteemed panelists. Mr. Rajiv Nath, who is the Forum Coordinator, Association of Indian Medical Device Industry. Mr. Sunil Khurana, who is the CEO and MD, BPL Medical Technologies Private Limited, and a member of ICMED as well. Mr. Anil Jauhri, who is the ex-CEO, NABCB, and co-chair, AMTZ Steering Committee. Mr. Nand Kishore Alva, who is the Dean, ESIC Medical College Hospital, Alwar. And Mr. Sharma, who is the ex-Joint Secretary of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Chairman, Steering Committee, ICMED QCI. I welcome you all, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Just to begin with, I would like to provide a brief backgrounder on the topic. India is one of the fastest growing market in the global medical devices industry, which is expected to grow to approximately $797 billion by 2025. Indian medical device market is relatively smaller than other overseas markets, but holds significant growth potential. From currently estimated at $11 billion, it is expected to reach $50 billion by 25. Till the early 90s, the sector was significantly dominated by domestic players. But after India opened up its markets in 1991, tables have turned. Today, India's medical device sector is dominated by multinational companies, which is evident from the fact that 80% of the sales are generated by imported medical devices. India exports more than 60% of their output, as Indian markets are dominated by such imported medical devices. NITI Aayog and the Department of Pharmaceuticals recognizes that Indian manufacturers have a 12 to 15% disability factor in manufacturing medical devices. Almost 80% by value of the domestic requirements are met by imports. Disposables and consumables make up 65% portion of the products which are being manufactured in India, and therefore to meet the medical devices needs of the population, expensive medical devices are imported. However, in the recent, there has been a paradigm shift in the approach, and companies have expanded operations to produce cost-effective, medium-end medical devices. A Yes Bank research reveals that owing to huge cost pressures and competition from China and Asia-Pacific countries, the Indian companies have started transitioning up the value chain into medium technology segment. The government is constantly taking initiatives to facilitate an orderly growth of the medical device sector to meet the public health objectives of access, affordability, quality, and innovation. So the new Medical Devices Policy 2023 is envisaged to provide the required support and directions to strengthen the medical devices industry into a competitive, self-reliant, resilient, and innovative industry. The proposed seminar will help us analyze the new policy comprehensively and bring India's take on the same. Thank you so much. So coming to our panelists now, we will be conducting the webinar in 3 sessions. And the first session will be a current scenario of medical devices. We'll be discussing about the current scenario on the Indian medical devices. And starting with, I would like Mr. Rajiv Nath to answer to my first question. Sir, please kindly shed some light on the Indian medical devices industry landscape, including its size, the growth rate, and major players. Also, I would request you to elaborate on the level of import dependence in this industry and where it is most critical. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, for the nice introduction and for organizing this webinar, which is very timely because just last week, the Honorable Minister had tabled in Delhi the National Medical Device Policy along with the Export Promotional Council, as well as a scheme for development of existing national clusters, and also released 6 papers on pharma and medical device industry. So definitely very timely. And I'm sure many people are curious as to what's happening and how it's going to be impacting them as stakeholders to this sector over here. So just to give you a brief background, medical device industry as you mentioned, is 70 to 80% import dependent. The imports went up by 41% to 63,200 crore rupees in the year 21-22, which is nearly double of what it was nearly 5 years back at 32,000 crore rupees. The medical devices are into various segments. We've got consumables and disposables, electronics and equipments, we got implants, we got IVD reagents, and a small segment of surgical instrumentation. So the import pie pretty much over the last 5 years as a percentage in the various sectors have remained the same, the dominant one being of medical electronics. And if you see the import data for the last 5 years, from 32,000 crore rupees, we went up to 40,000 crore rupees, and again stabilized at 42,000 crore rupees, went up to 45,000 crore rupees, and then to 63,000 crore rupees the last year. The imports mainly are coming in from 5 countries. These 5 countries are USA, Germany, China, Singapore, and Holland. The surprising countries over here are Singapore and Holland, which may not be very large producers by themselves, but do serve as transit points because they permit the use of the labeling of legal manufacturer. So other countries like China or Ireland or can be using these countries to target other countries for entrance into the markets. What's of concern is the imports, which shot up by 48% last year, both from USA and from China. So we've got imports from USA, which went up from 7,000 crore rupees to 10,000 crore rupees. But China went up from 9,000 crore rupees to 13,500 crore rupees. That's a steep increase of 4,500 crore rupees only by one country alone last year. So in this import domination and gloomy picture, we do have certain success stories. We do have Indian manufacturers who have broken the glass barrier and are doing well in the export market. So while we are heavily import dependent, our export growth is faster than our import growth. In exports also, we've got these 5 segments. And here again, the maximum export pie, interestingly, is of electronics, followed by consumables and disposables. And here again, in the last 5 years, the exports went up from 13,500 crore rupees to 24,000 crore rupees the previous year. So if we see the growth year on year, it went up from 13,000 to 17,000 to 18,500 to 20,000 nearly, and then 23,700 crore rupees the previous year. And this has been done by a few domestic champions. So in the various categories, we do have some very strong players in medical devices. For example, in the area of disposables, my own company, HMD, is probably the top 3 manufacturers in India for medical devices, syringes. And also for disposable syringes and needles, we are the top 3 manufacturers in the world. You've got medical electrodes, which is a leading player for disposable electrodes. You got Canem latex and MRK for surgical gloves. You got G Surgivare in Pune, which is very strong in the area of surgical drapes. Then in consumables, you got strong companies like Romsons and Polymedicure. In plastic disposables and consumables, you got Healthier making sutures, and PL Life Sciences making cardiac kits, Tylenol making rehab orthopedic support medical devices. Then in medical electronics, you have good companies like Alingers and Trivitron. You also have BPL. MD of BPL is also on this panel. You got Scanray, IITPL, and Schiller. Schiller is a Swiss company in the cardiac space. IITPL is very strong along with Alingers in the area of imaging. Then in the equipment category, equipments can be things like hospital beds. So you have Midmark from France, who took over Janak. You've got Remy, who's very strong in the blood storage units. You've got Panacea, who's very strong in oncology. They make linear accelerators in Bangalore. You've got companies like Phoenix, Shivani, who make mid-sized products like baby incubators. Then in the case of implants, India is again very strong. We are one of the top 10 manufacturers for most implants in the world, whether it's cardiac implants, orthopedic implants, or intraocular lens. So in intraocular lens, you've got companies like Apaswamy and Orolab which are the top 10 in the world. In implants, you got SMT and Merrill and Translumina doing very well. In orthopedic implants, we got more than 100 factories in India, but in joints, there are limited companies. We got Biorad and Sharma Orthopedics who are doing exceedingly well over there. In the case of diagnostics, again, India has done very well, and COVID diagnostics, we got a chance to prove to the world that we can be definitely very competitive over there. And in that respect, you've got companies like TransAsia Trivitron, Merrill, Agape, and Mitra Industries in Delhi. In the case of surgical instrumentation or OT instrumentation, you've got companies like ASCO, which is Atlas Surgical Company in Delhi. In Bombay, you got Allen Electronics, which is very strong in electrosurgical units. You got my own company, HMD, which is the top 3 manufacturers in the world for surgical blades. You got Quality Needles, which is the largest manufacturer in the world to make suture needles. And you got Endomet Technologies, which is very strong in the area of endoscopes. So, yes, these are exciting times. We've got certain companies in this ecosystem, which was highly import dependent, which was very adverse, still doing well. And now the government's focus for the last few years is on making India Atmanirbhar. COVID has shown the silver lining for medical devices. Focus has been on medical devices. And with the spate of policy announcements and the strategies the government has been announcing, we look forward to a story where hopefully in the next 5 years' time, we will help to realize India's vision. The vision which the government has put forward is shared with what we had. We had the vision that India should be the top 5 in the world for manufacturing medical devices. And the government wishes it not to be the top 5. They wish it to be number 1 in the world with 10 to 12% market share. So let's see how that pans out.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much. The increasing import dependence was a bit of a concern, but I really got that relief when you talked about the way exports are growing as compared to the imports, and how our industry is outperforming in various sectors. Thank you so much for your input, sir. Thank you so much. So moving ahead with my second question, I would like to introduce Dr. Nand Kishore here. His expertise from pathology will definitely lead us to know about Indian laboratories and how they are currently constructed and managed. Sir, I would also like to know that what other kinds of equipments should be included in your view in the laboratories. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Suriji, for inviting me to this platform to share certain views which I have got. Probably I'm giving a perspective of a doctor, in fact, in this group. I don't know how relevant it is for you. I hope it is. It will help in actually conceptualizing the entire thing, what actually you are telling. I was studying the entire thing since a few days about the concept of what exactly you want to convey to the people. But I wanted to give my perspective as a pathologist, because I'm basically a pathologist. I was professor of pathology for the past 22 years, and now I'm currently dean at ESIC Medical College, Alwar. I think, in my perspective, how a laboratory should be currently, how they are currently constructed and they are managed, and what kind of equipmentation is necessary, and what kind of support we can get from your side in the perspective of an equipment supplier or the industry from the equipmentation. Basically, as all of us know, the Department of Laboratory Medicine consists of mainly 3 faculties. I can say it is biochemistry, that is clinical chemistry with immunology, pathology, which is another wide and major branch, and the third one is microbiology. And as we have walked into the walk from this diagnostic medicine over a period of years, we have slowly jumped into another sector. As all of you know, it is molecular biology, that is molecular pathology, where instrumentation is of very high standards, maybe expensive as well. And a simple basic concept of an RT-PCR, which came out during COVID time, has proved itself beyond doubt. Yes, molecular biology is very, very actively taking its stage in the diagnostic industry. As I see the diagnostic industry for the past 20-25 years, we have traveled a very long way from the conventional way of diagnosing the diseases, conventional way of doing a semi-automated equipentation, to a completely automated up to a chemiluminescence technology, what we are doing in chemistry sections now. From a conventional histopathology in the pathology side, from a conventional histopathology to a molecular immunohistochemistry side. And as far as microbiology is concerned, from a conventional microbiology to an completely automated systems. And of course, molecular biology with new generation gene sequencing technologies, which are coming up in a very great way. And probably industry's support to our hospitals and the diagnostic industry is very, very valuable in this field as well. But what I feel from a doctor's point of view or as an administrative point of view, we have to give a very cost-effective system to our medical colleges and hospitals. Why I say is that I have worked in the sector of private diagnostic industry, private medical college, as well as now currently I'm holding a position in government sector. So what we are thinking is, are we doing a very cost-effective methodology in doing the testing? Are we getting enough support from the industry? Okay. So from the industry side, I think you should look into a very cost-effective way of performing the test, as well as equipment maintenance, as well as presenting an equipentation to the industry. Because buying a equipment, okay, it is in the diagnostic industry, it is little different from an hospital side per se. For example, if I buy a CT scan or MRI scan, there is, apart from its maintenance, there is nothing in that. But if I buy an electroimmunoluminescence system to my hospital, it is as good as I'm getting married to you. I mean to say, I have to buy the reagents from you. Okay, so more than the costing of the equipment, what actually matters for me is how much I'm spending on the reagent, which is basically a closed system what you're giving. Suppose if you give me an open system, I have got a way in which I can go and bargain in the market to get the best of the rates for my reagents and start utilizing them. But most of the times in today, as we have progressed the automation in the clinical chemistry side, as well as the immunoassay side, as well as in the hematology sides, we are seeing that it is better to have a closed system than the open system, because though we get married to one industry for getting that equipment, we get a good service from them. In fact, at the end of the day, what is that service that we are getting from the industry is more important than just the specifications what we have inducted in the equipment. So we have to look into industries which gives us a fantastic system or a very, very foolproof system and a very structured system in which we get a very good service backup. Okay, but because this service backup or this backup in the terms of reagents is a daily base. It's a daily phenomenon. It's not like CT or MRI. Yes, once in a month they'll come, serve and go. It doesn't happen in our sector, especially in diagnostic sectors. So I think from the industry point of view, we are looking at people who can give us good service, who can give us a good equipment at a reasonable cost, and who can give a good equipment support in terms of reagents at a reasonable cost. So this is what our diagnostic industry is looking at. Okay. So when we talk about how the laboratories are currently constructed in our country and how they are managed, generally they are constructed in a situation as if there is a reference laboratory. Okay, if you look at national players in our country, okay, so you see that they have got a reference laboratory either sitting in Delhi or Mumbai or Hyderabad or Bangalore. So these people will have all the equipments at one place. Okay, and this will be most of the times, these equipments are most of the times will be connected to each other, so that at a single shot of a blood sample, we are able to get the required tests of our choice. Okay, so in this context, I wanted to talk about something called as pre-analytical automations. Pre-analytical automation is a very big industry now, because as we pool the samples at one place, as we pool many of the hospital samples at one place and run a big diagnostic chain, so we need to very closely watch at the pre-analytical aspects of it. So today we have chain systems in which, in fact, in the hospitals also, we are trying to introduce in our hospital sectors. So we have pneumatic chute systems which carry the samples from the point of phlebotomy to the laboratory. And we have systems in which the single machine is connected to by a chain of events connected to all the machines, and it will read its own test which it has to be performed, and it will deliver the results online to us and finally online to the customer. So what I'm telling is, when we talk about a full-fledged diagnostic center, so we must concentrate on the pre-analytical system as well. Probably your industry will be able to give us good pre-analytical solutions. In fact, around 30% of our problems that we face in terms of wrong reports, or in terms of wrong entry of reports, or clerical errors, etc., can come to zero if we use a very effective pre-analytical system. So the industry has to look into giving us a very good pre-analytical system and very good electronic systems in which human interventions become almost zero. Okay, so this is what I wanted to tell you in this context. And one more point which I wanted to tell to my industry partners is that Make in India is a clause that we have in most of the sectors when we purchase the equipments in the government sectors especially. So we have a Make in India clause. Okay, so some of the equipments we cannot buy if Make in India clause comes there, and there we land up in some problems. So probably in your area you have to think, and you have to sit with the concerned people how this can be sorted out. Sometimes we feel that yes, certain equipments we have to buy a German-made equipment or an American-made equipment. So in such cases, we find it difficult. We have to compromise on the quality of whatever we are dealing with. So such a compromise, we should not, I don't appreciate when we give a good patient care in our country. So that's a journey that we are doing. So I'm just giving an insight on how diagnostic industry in terms of laboratory medicine you can contribute to us in a different way, and so that we take it forward from this point. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for choosing our platform for devising this kind of a roadmap, which is connecting the industry and the doctors. Very much enlightening. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your inputs.
Thank you.
And directly picking from where Dr. Nand Kishore has left, I would like to invite Mr. Sunil Khurana for my next question. Sir, how are Indian companies are collaborating with the international partners to access these new medical device technologies? And what benefits do you think they are bringing to the Indian market? Over to you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, I think you are on mute.
Just mute your first line. Can you repeat it again?
Yeah. So I would like your inputs on how Indian companies are collaborating with the international partners to access new medical device technologies, and what benefits do you think they are bringing to the Indian markets?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Meher, and thank you so much for TPCI to invite me for this program. As we know that multinationals are there in this space for a very long time. And 15th of August 2014, when our PM came to Lal Killa, and he said from there at Fort that come Make in India. From there, I felt initially it was more a slogan, but today I see a lot of action happening to make products in India. Now coming back to your technology partnerships, clearly if we want to build a technology, it takes time, because we all know that India has not been a R&D place. I mean, how many of us know that we have been wishing our kids to grow and do R&D? We all want them to become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, scientist in different areas, but not so much into the R&D. So R&D has not been a DNA in us, and that is changing now. Now you see lots and lots of incubation hubs coming, supported by government, supported by various institutes at academia. But when it comes to medical devices, you take generally 3 to 4 years to build a product from conceptualized situation to a product which can be taken to the market. There's a long life cycle. That if at all we have a partnership and we get a technology from overseas partners on some collaboration, it could be a joint venture, it could be a your financial arrangement, it could be many other ways. But companies who are not willing to come to India and they see India as a good market, and people like us, the companies like us who feel that it is taking time to build a technology, if we partner with those kind of companies, it's a win-win for both. And actually, it's a big win for India because we start making a product which are tested products, globally available, and we just start in a very short time, probably in a year's time. So instead reinventing the wheel, that's a good way to jump into. And I clearly see a lot of benefit. In fact, that's a one way. But at the same time, I believe that now there is a lot of effort happening in India also to build the technology. Like I have a 40+ R&D guys now working with me, and we have 7 to 8 projects right now, and we continuously keep completing and going to the next project. We are building our own products, but not a very high end. As you spoke in the very beginning, that middle range of product is up to the range where we should focus initially, unless our market size, global Indian consumption becomes very, very high. Till that time, something which gets consumed mostly we should build. So that's a one area which is happening in a big time. And this new medical device policy has been a great, great light for us. I mean, this is giving so much of hope, and that as a today stakeholders, we feel that this is going to take Indian medical devices to a long way. Today, as you also said in the very beginning, that we are about 1.5 to 2%. We consume medical devices on a global scale. If global scale is about $650 billion, we are at about $10 to $12 billion. So it's a very small. And on $10 to $12 billion, only about 25% is made in India, which means about $3 billion is what is made in India, and some is exported from there. So huge scale opportunity. And I personally feel that probably next 1 decade, we will really reach to a very high level of lot of indigenization. And as Dr. Nand Kishore said some time back, that some of those very high-end machines coming from US and Germany are probably more required. I mean, it's clear. I mean, whatever is good today, there's nothing wrong to import those. But what we are able to make, sometimes look and finish may not be that great. That is definitely a challenge. That Indian companies make a very reliable, very good, very accurate products, because those are all properly tested. But not very high-end. But those machines which we are making here, we should accept, and we should motivate Indian manufacturer by buying those machines. Thank you.
Definitely. Very heartwarming to find that Indian companies are do collaborating, because at the end of the day, we are and look for better technologies which we are still not being able to make. But the way your company is also investing in R&D, that's very heartwarming. So that's very good to know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And with this, we are over with our first section. And moving ahead with the second one, which is primarily based on the new medical device policy 2023. And for that, I would again pose my first question to Mr. Rajiv Nath. Sir, how, according to you, the recent policy on medical devices is aimed to promote the domestic manufacturing, just like Mr. Khurana has mentioned? And moreover, what are your views on the recent initiative to start the Export Promotion Council of Medical Devices? Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mayor. So, like I mentioned in my opening remarks, the vision from the government is to make India as the leading manufacturer for medical devices, and in the next 25 years, and they want India to capture a market share of 10 to 12% internationally. For doing this, they have put forward a policy backed by 6 strategy points. And this strategy points, basically, number 1 is for regulatory streamlining as the point number 1. We're not very clear as to what do we mean by regulatory streamlining, so we are seeking the government's clarification on that. The government had brought in the medical device rules, which are harmonized to international medical device regulations. So the responsibility of the manufacturers in the rule book is well known. How a manufacturer is going to be punished and disciplined, that is currently under the Drugs Act, which we think is a misfit, and for which we have been seeking for a long time a separate decriminalized act like the Food Safety Act. And for that, going forward, we are still unclear as to how the government wants to go on doing it. The Parliament has also recommended to have a separate act, but many quarters in the government, time and again for the last 20 years, have been seeking for tying us still to the Drug Act to have either an amendment or a revised act, but along with drugs and not separately. So that streamlining is a big question mark for us. The second area is the question of enabling infrastructure. So enabling infrastructure is got as a strategy, a good strategy. So the medical device parks is one part of the component of the strategy. Second component of the strategy is of strengthening the existing clusters. So you have existing national clusters in the Delhi NCR belt. You've got the Bombay Pune belt. You've got the Ahmedabad Vadodara belt. You've got the Bangalore belt. You've got Hyderabad. You've got Visakhapatnam. You've got Chennai. So these are the natural hubs which need to be strengthened by having manufacturers become more globally competitive by reducing their capex, by giving them access to common manufacturing facilities or testing facilities. So they don't need to invest by themselves and they can use these common facilities. That is the kind of infrastructure that is required over there. The next aspect of the strategy, third part of the strategy, is on R&D and innovation. For this, the government has assured us they already created a draft paper called R&D draft policy, which they have already consulted the industry on that, which would be common to pharma and to medical devices. And in this area, I would say I would applaud already the work that has been done by DST, DBT, BIRAC in building up the ecosystem in the last 10 years is phenomenal. So the venture capitalists and the commercialization incubators which have come up, the bio incubators, there are more than 80 bio nests currently in India. You've got the various IITs in addition to that. You've got the Venture Center, the IKP Knowledge Park. These are additional assistance points for the various startups and entrepreneurs to use them. So that is something that is going to be strengthened going forward. The next area is attracting investments in the sector. This sector cannot grow unless you've got fresh people coming in. So now that regulations have been done, now we got a more clarity as to how many people have actually invested. The government has given around 2,800 factories, manufacturing sites, licenses so far in Class A and B products, and nearly 700 factories in the category of C and D products. We expect another 500 will be getting it in Class A and B, and another 300 will be getting it in Class C and D. So around 5,000 factories approximately will be there, which will be coming under 3,000 manufacturers making medical devices. Now this investment has to become practically more than double in the next 5 years' time, and it's possible. We have more than 7,000 factories over there. So for attracting investments, the government has got its own ways of attracting the FDI for that, including the PLI scheme. And the government also has a strategy for HRD, for upskilling and for making courses in the IITs and the ISCs, which can be cross-functional. So a marrying of engineering and medical technology, both, is something that would be required. So engineers and doctors become developers over there. The next part of the strategy is on brand positioning and on awareness. And for that, the government has launched the Export Promotion Council, coming to the next part of your question over there. So TPCI itself is a Trade Promotion Council, and you've been kind enough to support the medical device industry in the past. Other councils who have been supporting medical devices industry actively have been EPC or Pharmexil or the Plexi Council, for example. But now everything would come under the Medical Device Export Promotion Council. It will be hosted at Jaida MedTech Park at near Noida Airport, which is coming up in the next couple of years' time. And we'll have regional offices initially in Hyderabad and in Visakhapatnam at the two MedTech parks over there. So with this kind of council availability over there, there should be a, I would say, more cohesive strategy going forward. So with this kind of strategy going forward, along with Invest India, we have been making a game plan. And we think that there is an opportunity for an investment of about $10 billion, which is about more than 80,000 crore rupees, which can come in to exploit this $20 billion market or 1.6 lakh crore rupee market. And we are targeting this in 3 segments over there. Like Mr. Khurana mentioned over there, and the most easy picking I would say would be technical collaborations. So we are targeting 1,200 technical collaborations of say about $5 million size each, about 40 crore rupee project size each, which can bring in investments of about $6 billion or 48,000 rupees. We are also targeting within that 1,200, There can be foreign suppliers who may want to invest the money also in the project over here. So around 200 joint ventures where they are willing to bring in equity and become partners on that project. So that will be slightly bigger projects of say $10 million each, 80 crore rupees each. And by this, another 16,000 crore rupees or $2 billion can come in over there. And then the MNCs, I think they will come in the last because they'll wait for the ecosystem to develop and thrive until the raw material component downstream industry will not be available. They will not be so keen to come to India. So of course, the government has been chasing them first, but we know by experience that normally they'll be the last to come in. Like any discerning buyer, even in a hospital, it's easier for us to convert a nursing home or a tier 2 or tier 3 than to convert a Medanta or a Apollo to buy an Indian product. So these 50 MNCs of about project size of about $40 million each can again bring in about $2 billion investments over here. So this is the broad, I would say, strategy and game plan, and it's something which is doable. And from IMED side, we are working with various embassies and various trade bodies in reaching out to manufacturers and providing the linkages to Indian manufacturers for coming this forward, as well as for new companies who are not in medical device space, for them to diversify into making medical devices.
Thank you so much, sir. Such a crisp summary of this policy, and we couldn't have a better understanding of this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your input, sir. Moving ahead, I would like to invite Mr. K. Sharma. Sir, what steps, according to you, are being taken under the new policy to improve the quality and safety of the medical devices? And simultaneously, for the second question, also I would mention it here itself, that what are the major changes which are being introduced, such as reclassification of the medical devices and the introduction of the new regulatory framework? If you would like to shed some light. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I first of all congratulate Trade Promotion Council of India for organizing this program at a very crucial and timely interval of time. As Rajiv mentioned, there are issues relating to the regulatory framework being strengthened and things like that. So I'll be dwelling on that in the context of one of the key points that has been highlighted in the policy, that is relating to the interlinkages between the quality and the public health. Now, the policy very clearly articulates that there is a linkage between the two, and that linkage has to be kind of kept in view while promoting the industry in the country. Now, some of the areas that have been identified in the policy are also very key elements, and they also give an insight into what kind of policy changes or policy interventions are proposed. Though to a large extent, the more detailing of the regulatory framework being streamlined are yet to come out. But the quality and public health perspective that also demands that the domestic and the global requirements are taken into account. And when we invest in the quality, we must also be investing in terms of quantity and expanding the base within the country. One of the problems which has, I think, very clearly been articulated in the policy is about the multifarious agencies who are there to regulate the quality in the country, and also other aspects of medical devices. So that is one key admission on the part of the government, that we have multifarious agencies, and multiplicity of agencies doesn't necessarily lead to the best possible results. So with a view to overcome those, what it has suggested is that we will have a single window system, which will be kind of aligned with the national single window system. That's the first step. Though that may not be the ideal step would have been perhaps to have a single agency to do all the work. And but to begin with, perhaps given the compulsions of federal polity, we may not be in a position to do that to that extent. So maybe that could be one way in which some improvements could happen. The other areas which have been identified is about the standards. Now, it clearly articulates that the Indian standard setting agencies will have to do on making additions in terms of more standards and more devices being included in that, and more procedures and technologies, etc., being included in that. Currently, there are around 1,500 standards that have been laid down by the BIS, and there are another 500 which are on the anvil. So that work is already going on, but that aspect becomes a very important aspect, and harmonization of those standards with the global standards is a very important key point. Another area which has also been touched upon is about the pricing part. Now, more than the medical devices industry, perhaps the pharma industry has been complaining about that, but I think that also is a problem area which has clearly been articulated and identified in the national policy now. The national policy also underpins the importance of the regulatory structures, even in the R&D, innovation, and all those things. And it also has spoken about harmonization of the practices, rules, regulations of the National Medical Commission with the industry practices and things like that. So to a large extent, there has been a compilation of all that has been known for over all these years. To a large extent, that has been brought together. And the fact but remains is that this is more like a statement of intent rather than a implementation plan. So what needs to be done next is to come out with a clearly articulated implementation plan so that we are in a position to set the clear timelines for achieving different milestones, and also clearly defining those milestones, like Rajiv mentioned earlier, in terms of the law being framed. So we will have to have a clear understanding as to what kind of law we want to frame. Though the Government of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has put a draft in the public domain for public consultations, and this is perhaps the time for stakeholders to chip in and give their inputs and engage with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. But there is a need for more clarity on that. And maybe in early 2000, there was a bill that had been prepared perhaps by the Department of Science and Technology. There was another bill that had been prepared in 2015-16 by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And a lot of things have been done. But what is very important is that this statement of intent, if it has to be converted into implementation, there has to be very clear targets, and this has to be done very fast, and we cannot go on wasting any further time. We have been discussing these issues for 10 years now, almost, at least from 2014 onwards, we have been working on these. The only achievements which addresses actually your second part has been in the field of coming out with the medical device rules, which was a great effort and painstaking effort by industry, consumers, and the government officials and things like that. But by and large, after that, not much has been done. Another problem area perhaps which needs to be addressed is that right now there are not sufficient qualified people for handling the medical devices, medical technologies in the CDSE, and state regulators do not have the capacity. And even within the pharma sector, the number of persons that are available is abysmally low as compared with the requirement for a country of India's size, manufacturing scale, and especially in terms of the aspirations and the ambitions that we have as a possible destination of manufacturing medical devices for the globe as a whole. Now, I do acknowledge that from 1991 onwards, there has been progressive changes, but those progressive changes have been very slow. If we are working at that pace, perhaps it will be difficult for India to achieve or realize that goal of being the number one in the field of medical technologies manufacturing. So something more urgent needs to be done, and it needs to be done fast. So as a country with the youngest population and the largest population, we have also an obligation, and we need to discharge that obligation very diligently, very efficiently, and we need to harness that for also the economic development of the country and put the country at the right pedestal. Now, when we talk about the medical devices rules, I think it brings a lot of clarity. It brings a lot of harmonization with the global practices, but it is only in the shape of a subordinate legislation as of now. It's not a full-fledged legislation, and therefore, to a large extent, it lacks that kind of legitimacy, which is there generally in case of the parliamentary legislations. So I will not devolve more on the things that have already been done. Risk-based classifications are there, class A, B, C, D are there. The regulation by the state regulators, which I alluded to earlier, is a problem area. The lack of capacity within the CDSU is a problem area. And in case of new clinical investigation of new products also, we don't have that kind of capacity within the organizations. Now, there have been other efforts, and those efforts again were done in association with the industry, and that included the online portal Sugam and medical devices online, MD online. Now, these are, I think, the efforts which have led to more transparency, consistency, and timely action also. And these actions have also made it possible for the authorities at the senior levels to keep a tighter monitoring of the position. Now, for example, in MD online, you have the facility of submission of all your applications. Processes are automated, and tracking of applications is possible. Timely alerts and notifications are there. No doubt the systems need to be further improved. That is also there. And this also has all the details, and also a YouTube video on how to kind of utilize the facility. It has the FAQs on medical devices separately and IVDs separately. But all said and done, there is also a need for looking at some structures beyond the government to take a part of the work of monitoring the quality and also undertaking the regulatory aspects. If we depend on the government for everything, perhaps the progress, as it is usual in the governmental structures, is going to be slow. So to that extent, some new initiatives need to be taken. One of the initiatives which you referred to earlier is this ICMED of the Quality Council of India, in which industry is also a partner. That's trying to put in place a system for voluntary certification, and I think that is the kind of things that we need to also look at in addition to strengthening the regulatory frameworks otherwise. And there is a need also for establishing linkages between those kind of structures and the structures that are there on the governmental side, on the regulatory side. As I mentioned earlier, I think this scheme is great. It brings together everything that has been said all these years, but it's nothing more than a statement of intent. It has to have a translational mechanism. It has to have an implementation plan, and that implementation plan has to be kind of a very, very robustly structured, calibrated properly, and with clear timelines and clear achievable targets. And if we need to invest something more in that we should not be shying away from that, because India has, as I mentioned earlier, the obligation to the world as a whole in terms of providing better public health care. And what is important is also that journey begins with one step. But in case of medical devices, where we are at a very, very infant stage, baby steps will not do. We will need to make a giant leap to begin with, and that giant leap only can position India as the ultimate manufacturing destination for medical devices and medical technologies. That's all that I thought should be put forth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for providing this reality check and bringing all those areas into spotlight, which, as you have said, actually need the timely action. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your inputs. So with this, I would also like to invite Mr. Sunil Khurana, again, sir, to have your industry view, like how the stakeholders and the industry is actually responding to this new policy. And is industry still facing some challenges and in implementing it, or are there only opportunities for us to decipher? Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So this policy is, of course, very much welcome. But as just now Sharma said, that this is a statement of intent. We have to still see the fine prints. We have to still see the terms and conditions. We have to still see the timelines and ownerships and all of that. So it's a long way to go. But good thing is that government decided that we want to at least launch a medical device policy. That itself is a big deal. Now, coming back, what we think as an industry, I can tell you, and again, Sharma ji said very clearly that CDSCO and BIS team is very short. They're very, very small in terms of size. At the same time, they are learning. I mean, they have yet not reached to a level of pinnacle where they can deliver things very quickly. So we all are facing a lot of challenges with that. Now, there are three types of medical devices. I'm not going to go into the devices, but how it is to be produced. One is that you simply import it. So that's one way. Second way is that you import and then build here some kind of SKD basis, semi-knockdown conditions and all. So that is another license. And third is that you purely build here in India with your own technology and with your own designs. Now I'm coming to first, second, and third, all three. First, it's very easy. If you want to import a device from outside, you have to upload some documents and you have produced a product. So product is anywhere ready. You have to only seek an approval from CDSCO, and that approval is not so difficult. Probably in a month, 2 months time, you get that. So getting a product in India, which is an imported product finished elsewhere, is a very easy route. Coming back to the loan method, loan to license and bring it to make here, there again, you have to, there is a product already produced somewhere and you have to submit the technical files and bring it. That is a little longer process, but the most difficult is if we want to make a product. If we want to make a product in India, we have to start in a very, very tough manner. I mean, we have to start from a test manufacturing license. So if you take some concept, before at the concept level, you have to go for a test license. And you have to apply in MD12, you get a MD13 as a license, which takes months, sometimes 3-4 months. Now, if an innovator makes a product and then he's just waiting to take to the next level, is a very painful. So I don't think it is needed. I mean, these things are more driven from a pharma because that's invasive. You consume that, chemical or salt in the body. That's a very different. Whereas what you are making is electronics or a consumable or a home care device, which is non-invasive. So for that, those kind of licenses in my mind is absolutely not needed. And then you get a manufacturing license. Now for a class A and B, there is another manufacturing license. You apply at MD3, get a MD5. Class C and D, you apply in MD7, get a MD9. That's the license you get, takes several months. And then for a loan manufacturing, as I said, that there is another 2 types of methodology which you have to do. And these are definitely not warranted. I just draw a parallel that there is an agency by name CE. CE is a European norm on the quality. They give you a permission to launch a machine, but they don't want you to know all of these routes. There's no 10 steps there. You go, you are an innovator, you have created a product, you have tested a product and gone for a test license in the sense, safety licenses. You go for an EMC, EMI test, electrical safety, patient safety, and then go and apply C, you get a C. Straight away you get it. Here, the way we have put the conditions are very much influenced on pharma, and nothing wrong. I mean, probably team who's doing it is very influenced on pharma. They've been doing last couple of decades and made pharma as a very bright spot. But that same copy paste in medical devices, if we are trying to do, we are setting for a big failure. Lot of companies will get closed. You will see that local number, which Rajiv in the very beginning said, that our percentage so and so. If we continue the way we are doing it, we will see that our actual localized product outcome will further slow down. Dramatically, it will slow down. I can challenge it because I myself can see that if we don't relax those dates and we don't speed up here, probably my own products, which I aim to make, will get delayed by 2 years easily. So those are the challenges. Similarly, today, for even exporting, today we make a product to even export outside world. I mean, just making in India and consuming in India is not enough to make us healthy. We are looking at a global product, high quality product, and we want to take it outside. Now, for that, you have to have a FSC, free sales certificate. Earlier, that was coming from Commerce Ministry. In a 1 to 2 weeks time, you were getting a permission. Today, for that also, you have to go to CDSU. I don't know what is the route and logic to go to CDSU. You have to export something from India. Custom will not permit you to take it outside because you have to have a CDSO permission there. I personally feel that we need to relook at it. On the flow chart, we need to relook at it, release the pressure at CDSU, and bring some logical, meaningful steps involved to bring the industry to go to the next level. I can assure you that India is growing. India is growing big time. I mean, middle class is growing, and that growth is helping you to do a lot of investment. So healthcare investments are going to grow big time. From 10 billion to going to 100 million, maybe in 20 years' time, is not very difficult. Definitely it will happen because China is sitting at 100 billion today on the medical devices. But if we have these kind of completely, there is absolutely no practicality in those approaches which we have. And I'm very fair to say that this is going to slow down the whole process and demotivate at least innovators. Many innovators will stop it. They will not get into this route because they will feel that at some stage they'll be under the clutches and they will have a problem. So I think we need to relook at it. And the intent is all great, but we have to have a better learning and increase the size of team. Essentially, those guys are so overloaded. I sent them today morning. I did just inquire about a couple of applications, filed some 2-3 months back. We have still not got those answers. 1 or 2 answer comes and you give back again reply, nothing comes back. So this way industry cannot grow. Only import can grow. And if we all then stop it, then it will be only import destination, not the local destination. I'm sorry to say this very frankly, but in my view, we have to relook at the processes and policies and framework and SOPs to streamline, to make it enable, not to make troubles. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for such a comprehensive explanation of the industry's plight, because at the end, the industry is the actual recipient of all the policies which are made. So thank you so much for bringing this up. And with this, I would like to move to the third section, which is actually focusing the future prospects for the industry of this medical device policy. And with this, I would like to call Mr. Anil Jauhri, sir. Sir, please, I would request you to elaborate on the point which was touched by Mr. Sunil Khurana, sir, also, that how India's level of compliance with global standards is actually performing, and how can we raise our standards to match it. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nath. Let me first thank TPCI to have invited me over and share my views on the subject of medical devices. Before I talk about medical devices, I would like to cite the example of toys. You are hearing, probably all of you might be reading news items, how toys have, is a success story in India. And we are exporting toys now. Once upon a time, we were importers, and now we are exporting toys. In that success story, I think one part which is not probably stressed so much is the fact that we brought in a toy regulation some 3 years back. That's one part of the story, which is similar to medical devices, because I think not 2017, as Mr. Sharma said, I think 2020 is the time when 11th February notification, which actually brought in regulation of medical devices, comprehensive regulation, because before that it was only notified medical devices. So the one part of that story is similar to toys. The second part is not similar. In toys, what happened was we adopted international standards, which makes it easier for the manufacturer to access foreign clients because he's already manufacturing to international standards. So that one part here in case of medical devices has not happened because we have prioritized BIS standards over international standards. I wish, my view remains that we should have pitched international standards higher than BIS standards. We should have said that our medical device will comply with international standards. If international standards are not available, then they should comply with BIS standards. In fact, Mr. Sharma made a reference to harmonizing standards, which comes to the same thing. comply with international standards, or you harmonize your standards with international, it's one and the same thing. So that's the one part that needs to be tackled. Second part is that if the ideal situation for any country is if its products can be sold or exported as regulated. I mean, that should be our aim. That as they are regulated in India, they're accepted worldwide. That would be the ideal thing to happen. It doesn't happen for a variety of reasons. Two reasons are: A, when your standards are differential. If you're not following the international standards, naturally you can't expect that your product will be accepted globally. And second part, which many of us forget, and which is very important, is the manner of demonstrating compliance. It's not only about standards, it's also about manner of demonstrating compliance. To give you a quick example, the purity of gold is same worldwide. 18 karat is 18 karat here in Dubai and in US. 18 karat, 22 karat is same as here in Dubai or in US. But we have a hallmarking system which is not acceptable abroad. And our gold is not acceptable abroad. Why? Because the assaying centers are not accredited to international standards. Well, one simple reason. The product standard is the same, but the manner of demonstrating compliance is not internationally acceptable. So we have to have both. Third thing is when we have standards which are not on par with international standards, then one way of facilitating export is to work out mutual recognition arrangements with other countries. But before that, you create a system here to certify to global standards. I mean, two quick examples I can give you: APIDA's organic system, which was created way back in early 2000 and got acceptance abroad, or another organization called EIC, Export Inspection Council, where I worked for a short while. They have a seafood certification accepted by EC since 1997. So in fact, ICMED Plus, if Rajiv would remember and Sharma ji would remember, the idea of ICMED Plus, I was in QCI myself, was precisely to create a system to certify to global standards so that at some point of time, commerce can present this to the foreign regulator and say, you please, our regulated devices may not be on par with yours, but you please accept ICMED Plus as a demonstration of compliance. I mean, we are still to travel that road fully. Fourth issue that I would like to touch is about the laboratory infrastructure. I think the policy makes all the right noises, but as some of the panelists have said, rightly said, that the devil is in the detail. And that detail is missing right now. So to me, this policy needs to be followed up by, on each issue, an action plan. Clear deliverables, clear timelines, what do you want to do, how you want to do, and how much time you want. I think that is something industry should ask the government for, that now you please follow with this very good initiative that you have created a policy. Please follow it with an action plan with more detailing on each issue. One of the issues was about laboratories. Now, laboratories, we have a problem. When COVID came, we did not even have a lab to test N95 masks. Even today, we have a shortage of labs in various areas, and manufacturers are actually struggling. Even going to GEM, they are struggling to show performance evaluation of their medical devices because labs are not there. Ventilators, for example, their labs are not there. Now, typically, when a product gets regulated, private sector steps in, because when the demand grows, private sector would step in. But I have a feeling that this is not going to happen so easily in medical devices, especially where the manufacturing is very limited. But fact remains is that even if we have one manufacturer, we need a lab. The regulator needs a lab. So my suggestion would be that the government should actually identify those areas where there is shortage of labs and where there's less likelihood of private sector stepping in and invest money there. And should not look at returns for the money. I mean, we can't be thinking of commercial labs versus government labs on the same track. They should comply with the same international standards, no doubt. But in terms of commercials, I think we need to look at them differently. Private sector will step in when it sees that there's going to be profit in the business. Government should step in where it sees there's not going to be profit and private sector is not going to step in. So the IITs and the NIPers, I think, should be supported to set up labs for these areas where we have very little manufacturing, but we need a lab. In any case, we need a lab. If we have going to regulate, we even need a lab for imports coming in to be sort of a market surveillance system whereby imports also have to be checked. It can't be a free import regime. It's actually right now, I think Mr. Khurana said it. We have made imports too easy. It is not so. This is another distinction with toys. Toys, the import are not so easy. Toy manufacturer in India and in China or in the US goes through the same process, same timeline, same cost, same process. It's not so in medical devices, which is another, it's another debate. So I think these are 3 or 4 areas, I think, which are needed to make our, facilitate export and make us globally competitive as far as standards are, regulations and standards.
So Jauhri sir, I'll just tell you that we deal of our major products are from our own factory, but we also have a partnerships like in ultrasound. We get it from Korea. In a very high quality ventilator, we get it from Germany. Now, those products we have seen with a very little effort of a month, we have got licenses. So what I meant is that whatever is already created there, to get those products, it was very easy. But when I have to build it here, it is 100 times more effort. And in fact, I have now told this morning in one of the meeting that drop 50% R&D efforts now, only focus on 50%. Once we get it, then we will go and make the investment, otherwise there is no point. So this is very painful. And your point on more lab is spot on. I mean, you know that if I have to apply for a testing of EMC, sometimes we get after 2 months time a slot to go and test the machine. And if there is a minor issue, you come back, you correct that machine and again take back after 2 months. So those absolutely right, you said. But importation today on a medical devices is relatively very easy. It's probably 10% effort as compared to making a Make in India product shine. And if we are looking at policy, this policy is to build Atmanirbhar. This policy should be aimed to promote more and more local products, and then only we can succeed. Otherwise, the way we are today regulated, I think 50 billion, which we are talking, even if it happens in 20 years' time, I'll be very happy if the framework is not changed.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Anil sir. I would really request you to have a summing, comment at the end of it. But before that, I would like to shift my focus to Dr. Nand Kishore, sir. Sir, please, just at last, I would like to brief you. I would like you to brief us about the accreditation process of laboratories, sir, and how India should be working on it.
Thank you once again, Mahaji, for calling me again. And it has been a wonderful experience for the past 45 minutes with all industry stalwarts here. I'm actually in the other side of the, the table, probably user, right? So I just wanted to bring out a point here. Like, for me, quality is just like, cycling a bicycle. In fact, when I stop cycling it, probably the quality process will collapse. So what is my perspective in this particular thing is that industry partners for us in the medical field also should focus into how a best quality report could be generated in the laboratory with the assistance of the industry. Okay. So as I was just pointing out in my last talk here, there is a pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical areas. So you give an equipment for us in the hospital, which is analytical in nature. Okay. But when it coincides with the so-called pre-analytical and post-analytical sectors, probably we will be able to give best of the quality in our laboratory, best of the quality in the reports, and hence better patient care. So in this sector, when we form policies, I feel we must ensure that the policies will be taken in such a way that it becomes mandatory across the country, whoever is utilizing these equipmentations. It may be a small sized laboratory, or it may be a medium sized laboratory in a hospital, or it may be a large sized laboratory in a metropolitan city. But wherever these equipmentations are going, the policy should be very clear that, and it should become a mandatory things that the accreditation process, the quality should be maintained in all respects. So if I have to, when you talk about quality in manufacturing and equipment, I talk about a quality when it delivers the actual thing that is required by a doctor or a laboratory professional. So in this sector, I feel there are mainly 3 quality processes which are in place in our country, which is easily accessible to all, though many quality processes are processes are there. Sharmaji was, I think he's the right person to talk about this towards QCI aspect. I feel our laboratories are under the strict control of NABL, National Accreditation Laboratories process. NABL accreditation has, over a period of time in Indian scenario, has changed the entire quality processes which are happening in the laboratory sector. So while manufacturing or while delivering the equipment, you must ensure that these are certified by by NABL, and the person who is using it is well aware of these quality processes. So in the same way, NABH also. So any equipment that you are giving to the hospital should be complying with the NABH policies, which is actually laid down by QCI, and also NABL policies as far as laboratory is concerned. So one step ahead will be that I will be looking out at CAP accreditation processes as well. Okay. So when we talk about molecular biotechniques and histopathology techniques or immunohistochemistry techniques in the field of pathology or in oncopathology especially, we rely more on international standards as well, like in CAP accreditation, College of American Pathologists accreditation also. And we must ensure that these quality processes are in place in all the areas, all the sectors where we use equipentation in the laboratory platforms. So I don't want to take much time here, but I want to make it a point very clear that when we take out these policies in manufacturing, also take out the policies to ensure that the product which is utilized by the hospital or a doctor or a laboratory specialist also should have a complete knowledge and complete understanding and a very, very practical connotations of the entire accreditation processes like NABL, NABH, and CAP. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to the team so that they have included to say my perspective as a doctor in this platform. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here. So moving ahead, I would request Mr. Anil, sir, so please suggest us a roadmap for our regulations to become way more progressive. And I would also like you to mention the role of voluntary certification in the same if it has something. Please, over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. I think about regulations, I have already spoken in terms of what needs to be done. As far as Dr. Alva's part is concerned, what he was speaking just now, just to inform him that the labs have to be accredited. That's already a requirement under medical devices. So that's not such an issue that labs will have to be accredited. I think the shortage of labs is a bigger issue than having accredited labs. But as far as voluntary certification is concerned, yes, worldwide it is being recognized that voluntary action by industry should be rewarded. If it's on its own is doing something extra, something more than what regulations require, why not acknowledge it? In fact, in the food side, there is this international body, which is official international body for international standards, Codex Alimentarius Commission. It's making a guidance for how regulators should take cognizance of voluntary certification. Well, there are a lot of voluntary certification programs in food sector, plenty of them, a lot of private programs. In medical devices, not so many, but look at this. The CDSC required that you should have ISO 13485 certificate for registration. But the day you have become a licensee, that certificate is no longer required. Licensing requires compliance to Schedule 4 and Schedule 5. What do I do with that certificate? If I am a manufacturer who took a certificate for 13485, now I've got a license. Now I no longer need that certificate really as per the regulatory regime. Why wouldn't CDSCO incentivize that certificate? Because it still meets Schedule 5. It still is a demonstration of compliance to a large part of Schedule 5, if not entirely, because there's some differences. Similarly, think of it. We say that the medical device should comply with BIS standards. We also know that BIS runs a very successful voluntary certification program, also runs compulsory certification where government notifies that compulsory certification, like toys. So now suppose on my own, I was to go to BIS and get myself certified for my medical device. Why should CDSCO not consider that as evidence of compliance to BIS standard? If I'm doing that. So to me, this is happening globally. I mean, sometimes my complaint is that we change ever so slowly. the word changes faster. EU has actually an official system of notifying harmonized standards. I'm sure many of you are aware that they actually notify harmonized standard. They say that you comply with this standard, it's deemed to be compliant to the regulation. I think something similar. Even Food Authority has a provision that if you are complying with national or international standards, your license could be renewed without inspection. So I think CDSCO's regulation also needs to build in a provision whereby if an industry goes for a certification, a voluntary certification, be it ISO 13485, be it ICMED, be it BIS certification, if it meets wholly or partially the part of the regulation, any part of the regulation, it represents less risk to the regulator. It should give cognizance to that certification, incentivize that certification. It also reduces the burden on the regulator. Otherwise, regulator has the, I think Rajiv gave a figure of 1,000 manufacturers now, anticipated 1,000 manufacturers in India. So you have to exercise supervision over 1,000. Out of those 1,000, 200 are having certain kinds of certifications. You can treat them as less risk and focus on the 800 rather than the 1,000. So you can, conserve your resources. So this is an approach that I would like that our regulators start implementing across all sectors, especially in medical devices, so that voluntary certifications also get incentivized. And if the industry is doing something extra, it also gets rewarded. That was the idea of, having voluntary certifications. ICMED was designed with this purpose in mind.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And
I just add a small point.
Sure.
Jauhri sir mentioned about the government investing in the laboratories. In 2016, the government had approved a proposal, and that included setting up of laboratories. Now, what has happened in that case is that buildings have come up, but they have not been equipped. There is no manpower for those. And in some cases, the buildings have not met the requirements that are required to be met for medical devices. So a slight modification to the suggestion that Jauhri sir made is that while government does invest in such laboratories, but if they do some kind of a viability gap funding and set them outside the governmental structures, perhaps that would be the ideal situation. Because what happens is that the processes for creation of posts, the processes for kind of getting the funds released for procuring equipment, and all those are time consuming in the government. And howsoever hard we may try, there will always be a lag. So if we can think in terms of some kind of a PPP, with government doing some kind of viability gap funding for laboratories where it is not profitable for the private sector to come up with, that could be a good idea. That's all that I want to do.
Actually, I agree. If I said investing, I actually meant funding. I should, I think, rephrase. And I can give you example of, for example, in food sector, Ministry of Food Processing Industry had a scheme for supporting labs, and in government institutions, they were supporting up to 80%. In private institutions, they were supporting up to 50%. Same thing APIDA did for food labs. So what I meant was that IITs, snipers, they can be encouraged to have laboratories. Government should provide them some funding and should not look at, my main point was, should not look at commercial returns from those labs, because that's very difficult. In fact, I'm mentoring IIT Kanpur, and I've been suggesting to them that labs, commercial labs are not run the manner teaching labs are run. So it would help if you create a separate entity for the lab so that it can be professionally run. And it's not run by somebody who's a professor who's additional charge of lab, and 3 years later somebody else takes additional charge. That's not how commercial labs can really actually function. So my suggestion to them is, and they have the freedom to create separate entities. Create a
There's a lag. Anil sir, we can't just hear you.
Can I come in?
Please.
Yes. So again, to address the concerns raised by Dr. Alva, we are here in the industry to serve the medical profession, and His concerns are very appropriate in terms of quality expectation. So 2 points which he's raised, I would like to address as the industry perspective. Number one is in terms of access to high specification imports. So once again, like the car industry, Marutis, Nanos, Toyotas, Hyundais, these are something which are small, mid-sized cars, which are made in the country in mass volume, low cost, affordable, supported by the government policies, made in the country. Somebody is a discerning buyer. He has the money, he can afford, he pays 150% customs duty and buys an expensive imported Mercedes-Benz or an Audi. So nothing wrong with imports coming in, as long as the imports are not refurbished cars, as long as the imports are not undermining Make in India of these small mid-sized cars over there. This gives the motivation for manufacturers to go up the value chain to make higher quality products, higher specifications, because they can make more money over there. Then you have the companies who become Mahindras and the Toyotas in India who make more high-end products over here. That is one part of the motivation, part of the policy, which we hope the government will be considering going forward, is to allowing refurbished equipment to come in. The second part is regarding the issue about quality, which he was mentioning over there, in terms of pre-analytical. So let me inform Dr. Alva, in case he may not be aware, there has been a challenge for manufacturers like my own company, Indian Religious Medical Devices. We make, for pre-analytics, we make the vacuum tubes for blood sampling. Okay. Sterilized by gamma radiation. The cost of gamma radiation is a good 30 paisa, which is 10%, more than 10% of the product cost, which makes it extremely expensive. We have to compete with imports coming in from China, which are not sterilized by radiation. They have a sign called on the tube sterile A. What is sterile A? Sterile aseptic. What is sterile aseptic? It is passed under the UV light, in a bench or a tunnel, and that makes it sterile. So you cannot have two standards like that coming into the country, and that's where regulations help. So going forward, we do hope that regulations of the right kind, appropriate kind, will filter out that kind of quality, and buyers like you will be putting in the right specification. And here again, as a buyer like you, as a government institution buyer like you, we would urge you to consider putting it as a preference, because you can't make it mandatory because there are not enough manufacturers having that kind of certification, but putting in a preference for voluntary certificates like ISO 13485 or ICMED 13485 or ICMED plus 13485. So somebody who has one of these certificates or two of these certificates or all three certificates should be given a higher preference than somebody who doesn't have a certification. Mr. K.L. Sharma and Mr. Jauhri, of course, were mentioning for the regulator's perspective that somebody who has a certification should be given cognizance and incentivization in terms of a fast tracking of the regulatory approval process. Here we are talking in terms of you as a buyer seeking this out. This will incentivize more people to come forward. So rather than aiming for just the manufacturing license, they will aim for a higher standard to satisfy more discerning buyers like you who want to have a higher quality. I hope that addresses your concerns.
Definitely.
ICMED certification is meant to global standards. BIS licensing is made to Indian standards. The ICMED, which was introduced by QCI, IMED, and other 22 stakeholder departments or organizations, was to give confidence to buyers in India and internationally that the product is compliant to an ISO standard. ISO is the international standard. So you can be assured on that perspective over there.
Sir, on the same lines, we have an upcoming question here. So this is from Toma Rama Rao, and the person is asking that ISO 13485 is not accepted for IVDs in TGA, that is Australia, from 23rd March 2023 onwards. And can you please comment on this and how it is going to be implemented in India? Please, over to you, sir. Please.
Are you referring to who? Me?
Anyone, sir, please. Whoever is comfortable answering the question.
Well, I did see this news about ISO 13485 certificates not being accepted by TGA. Okay. Well, they also said that they'll come out with a guideline on what could be an alternative evidence. So until we see that, we don't know what's going to be the fate. As far as India is concerned, as I said, ISO 13485 certificate was required for registration, but once you are licensed, there's no requirement of ISO 13485 certificate in any case. Licensing, once you have been licensed, you don't need any certification. You need compliance to Schedule 4 and Schedule 5, which is to be demonstrated through notified bodies as far as Class A and B are concerned, and directly regulator will audit you in place of the Class C and D.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. With this, I would like to thank my each panelist here. Thank you everyone for your valuable time, sir. And very, very healthy session. Thank you all. Thank you all, sir.
Thank you.
Before we close, there was a question by Mr. Kulban Chani on the Q&A. Are there any timelines fixed for the MDR 2022?
True.
So, Kulbanji, there is no, as such, there was a bill which was put in by Ministry of Health for regulating drugs and devices. That is still, I think, going in for inter-ministry comments and inter-ministry review before it will go to the Parliament. As an industry body, we have opposed that because for us it is from the frying pan into the fire. It is going to make life more difficult for us because it has got much more tougher and more punitive conditions of search and seizure. These are terms which we don't hear in medical devices. We are used to things like audits, improvements, performance, compliance, conformity. So such terms of seizure, search and seizure or raids. So they have just converted the definition for inspector and put the name on top as medical device officer. That kind of a regulatory framework would be ill-conceived for the country and ill-conceived for India. Mr. Khurana already is facing the hassles. His company is newly come into the regulatory regime, making medical electronics BPL, which is a large organization with adequate staffing who are regulatory experts, manufacturing experts, having the international certification and CE marking. And even for an organization like him, it is being a challenge to comply to Indian regulations. And he's feeling disturbed about introducing new products and with the compliance with the criminal kind of punitive actions which can be filed against him as a director of the company. So the draft MDR getting into an act passed to the Parliament, we hope not, to answer your question. We'll be opposing it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for taking over and giving the reply. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone. We had a lovely session.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.